Hello BookTube. I thought today I'd go back to an old tradition on my channel that I'd done like 2 months ago, but then I stopped, and that was reading you some Henry Lawson short stories. So I thought I would start that today just to throw one out there, why not? And so I don't have my Penguin edition that I used to have of my Henry Lawson short stories. Instead, I have this massive 1,000 page hardcover of it. It's so heavy. It's literally a weapon, like, and I keep it on my bedside table as a protection. You know, a cop to this to the nose will very much hurt. But anyway, we're going to be doing one of my favorite ones. I've tried to read this out for a while, but because I can't read out loud, I struggle. So I've tried filming it so many times, but I can never do it. But I don't care. I'm going to do it today. This is one of my favorite Henry Lawson short stories. This is the Union Buries, It's Dead. It's very dark, but also very lovely. And Josh, if you're watching this does count if you're doing the Penguin short story collection of Henry Lawson. This is in there, so you can say you've already read one. So anyway, here's The Union Buries, It's Dead. While out boating one Sunday afternoon on a billabong across the river, we saw a young man on horseback driving some horses along the bank. He said it was a very fine day and asked if the water was deep there. The joker of our party said it was deep enough to drown him, and he laughed and rode up further. We didn't take much notice of him. Next day, a funeral gathered at the corner pub and asked each other in to have a drink while waiting for the hearse. They passed away some of the time dancing jigs to a piano in the bar parlour. They passed away the rest of the time skylarking and fighting. The defunct was a young union labourer, about 25, who had been drowned the previous day while trying to swim some horses across the billabong of the Darling. He was almost a stranger in town, and some of the fact of his having been a union man accounted for the funeral. The police found some union papers in his swag and called the General Labourers Union office for information about him. That's how he knew the secretary had very little information to give, and departed was a Roman, and the majority of the town were otherwise, but unionism is stronger than creed. Drink, however, is stronger than unionism. And when the hearse presently arrived, more than 2/3 of the funeral were unable to follow. They were too drunk. The procession numbered 14 souls, following the broken shell of a soul. Perhaps not one of the 14 possessed a soul any more than the corpse did, but that doesn't matter. 4 or 5 of the funeral who were boarders at the pub borrowed a trap which the landlord used to carry passengers to and from the railway station. They were strangers to us who were on foot, and to we were them. We were all strangers to the corpse. The horseman, who looks like the drover, just returned from a big trip, dropped into the dusty wake and followed us for a few hundred yards, dragging his packed horse behind him. But a friend made a wild and demonstrative signals from the hotel veranda, hooking it at the air in front with his right hand and jabbing his left thumb over his shoulder in the direction of the bar, so the drover hauled off and didn't catch up to us anymore. He was a stranger to the entire show. We walked in twos. There were 3 twos. It was very hot and dusty. The heat rushed in fierce, dazzling rays across every iron roof and a light-coloured wall that was turned to the sun. 1 or 2 pubs closed respectfully until we got past. They closed their bar doors and the patrons went out through the side or the front and made a back entrance for a few minutes. Bushmen seldom grumbled at the inconvenience of this sort when it caused by a funeral. They have too much respect for the dead. On the way to the cemetery, we passed 3 shearers sitting on the shady side of the fence. One was drunk, very drunk. The other 2 covered their right ears with their hats out of respect for the departed, whoever he might have been, and one of them kicked the drunk and muttered something to him. He strained up himself, stared and reached helplessly for his hat, which he shoved off and on again, and then made a great effort to pull himself together and succeeded. He stood up, braced him up against the fence, knocked off his hat and remorsefully placed his foot on it to keep it off his head till the funeral passed. A tall, sentimental drover who walked by my side, cynically quoted Byron verses, suitable for this occasion, to death and asked the pathetic humour whether we thought that the dead's ticket would be recognised over yonder. It was a GLU ticket, and the general opinion was that it would be recognised. Presently, my friend said, "You remember when we were at that boat yesterday, and we saw a man driving some horses along the bank?" "Yes." He nodded at the hearse and said, "Well, that's him." I thought a while. "I didn't take any particular notice of him," I said. "He said something, didn't he?" "Yes. He said it was a fine day. You'd have taken more notice of you knowing that he was doomed to die in an hour, and that those were the last words he would say to any man in this world. To be sure that the full voice from the rear, if ye'd known that ye'd have prolonged the conversation." We plodded on across the railway line and along the hot, dusty road, which ran across the cemetery, some of us talking about the accident and lying about the narrow escapes we had ourselves. Presently someone said, "There's the devil." I looked up and saw a priest standing in the shade of the tree by the cemetery gate. The hearse was drawn up and the tailboards were opened. The funeral extinguished its right ear with its the funeral extinguished its right ear with its hat as all four men lifted the coffin and laid out it over the grave. The priest, a pale, quiet young fellow, stood under the shade of a sapling which grew at the head of the grave. He took off his hat, dropped it carelessly on the ground, and proceeded business. I noticed that one or two of the heathens winced slightly when the holy water had sprinkled on the coffin. The heathens winced slightly. Oh, sorry about that. The drops quickly evaporated, and the little round black spots they were left soon dusted over. But the spots showed by contrast the cheapness of the shabbiness of the cloth in which the coffin was covered. It seemed black before, now it looked like a dust grey. Just here a man's ignorance and vanity made a farce of the funeral. A big bull-necked publican with heavy blotchy features and supremely ignorant expression picked up the priest's straw hat and held it about 2 inches over his head and perseverance during the whole of the service. The father, be it remembered, was standing in the shade. A few shoved their hats on and off uneasily, struggling between their disgust for the living and of the respect of the dead. The hat had a conical crown and brim sloping down all round like sunshade, and the publican held in his great red claw spread over the crown. To do the priest justice, perhaps, he didn't take notice of the incident. A strange priest or parson in the same position might have said, "Put down the hat, my friend. It is not a memory of our departed brother, worth more than any of my complexion." A water-barked layman might have expressed himself in a stronger language, none of less to the point, but the priest seemed unconscious of what was going on. Unconspicuous of what was going on. Besides, the publican was a great important pillar of the church. He couldn't be as ignorant as to concede us lose such a great opportunity of inserting his faithfulness and importance to the church. The grave looked very narrow under the coffin, and I drew a breath of relief when the box slid easily down. I saw the coffin get stuck once. At the rockwood it had been yanked out with difficulty and laid on the sods of the feet of the heartbroken relations, who howled dismally while the grave diggers whitened the hole, but they didn't cut contracts so fine it was in the west. Our grave diggers was not altogether bowelless, and out of respect for the human quality described as feelings, he scraped up some light in the old dusty soil and threw it down into the deadened fuels gently down against the end of the grave, with the black of the shovel turned outwards, but it was hard and dry. Darling river clods rebound and knocked off all the same. It didn't matter much, nothing does. The fall of the lumps of the clay on the stranger's coffin doesn't sound any different than from the fall of the same things on an ordinary wooden box at least. I didn't notice anything awesome or unusual in the sound, but perhaps one of us, the most sensitive, might have been impressed by reminding of the burial of long ago. Oh my god, sorry. Burial of the long ago. My screen was about to go flat. When the thump of every sod joined his heart. I have left out the waddle because it wasn't there. I have also neglected to mention that the heartbroken old mate, with his grizzled head, bowed, the great pearly drops steaming down his rugged cheeks. He was absent. He was probably out back. For similar reasons, I have omitted reference to the suspicious moisture in the eyes of the brevet bush roughman named Bill. Bill failed to turn up, and only the moisture which was introduced by the heat. I have left out the sad Australian sunset, because the sun was not going near down any time. The burial took place exactly at midday. The dead bushman's name was Jim, apparently, but they found no portraits nor locks of hair, nor any love letters, nor anything of that kind in his swag, not even a reference to his mother, only some papers relating to the union matters. Most of us didn't know that. Most of us didn't know the name till we saw it on the coffin. We knew him as that poor chap that drowned yesterday. So his name's James Tyson, said my drover acquaintance, looking at the plate. Why, didn't you know that name before? I asked. No, but I knew he was a union man. It turned out afterwards that JT wasn't his real name, only the name he went by. Anyhow, he was buried by it, and most of the great Australian dailies have mentioned in their bravery columns that the young man named James John Tyson was drowned in the billabong of the Darling last Sunday. We did hear later on that his real name was, but if we ever had the chance to read it, it would have been Missing Friends column. We shall not be able to give any information to the heartbroken mother or sister or wife, nor to anyone who could let her hear something of his advantage, for that we have already forgotten the name. So that was very beautiful. I definitely didn't do justice to the short story because it's so beautiful and amazingly well written. If you want to check out more Henry Lawson, he's available everywhere. I think he is on Project Gutenberg because these stories came out like the 1890s, so check that out. But yeah, maybe we'll do some more Henry Lawson, but that was The Union Buries Its Dead. And yeah, let me know what you thought about in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching BookTube. I'll see you next time.